Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, two titans of cinematic review. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but always captivating. Your hosts Antonio of the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and Justin Henson of the Movie Wire are here to take you back to the balcony. Hello, welcome everybody. It's here, it's time. It is our 2-year anniversary, which means it is the time for the 2025 Season 2 award ceremony. Applause, applause, applause. We are taking this episode to really celebrate the year that was 2025. Very different than 2024, our first season. And I think that the films that we brought to the table this year, the first half of the year was a lot of new discoveries for both of us. We literally did 2 months of first time watches and a lot of listener requests. And so it was a lot of new films for us. I'm not going to say that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was just an interesting thing. But I think a lot of those films kind of ended up on my list for good and bad for the awards. What did you think about 2025?
I agree with you. It's interesting, but I'm going to go more on the cynical side that it was bad when it comes to new discoveries. I think that was a strategy that we both were surprised with, but all in all, holistically, I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we had some new discoveries. I'm glad we had some discussions that were new to both of us. Overall, I think you're right. It was an interesting year, and you know what? It's a win to me when we can have a conversation for new watches, new talent, new styles that we've seen time over time. So to me, I love this year. I think it was fun. It was in comparison to the first year where we are getting to know how we dance on the dance floor together. This year was something new. It was refreshing. And we got a lot of fantastic fans that actually put their retrospect into our show. And, you know, it was fun. I absolutely love this year. It's so far out of the 2 years we've been doing it, it's my favorite year.
No, I agree because it was a challenge, right? The first year was kind of cake. We picked the movies we wanted to talk about for 52 episodes. We had a great awards ceremony. We had our little Oscar special, our best of, worst of, and those were a lot of fun, but they were all very familiar and predictable. This year was like the real wild card, and I liked that. And even though I may not have enjoyed the movies, I enjoyed the conversation. What I wish there was more of, if I had to go back, was in some of those new discoveries, there were films that I liked a lot more than you did. And I wish there would have been some more films that you and I could have teamed up against Siskel and Ebert on, like, 2-on-2. But there was a lot of reviews where we actually agreed with them more than we didn't. And there was a lot of episodes where we actually were right in line with our prospective critics. Like, I'm not always online with Gene, but there was like 3 or 4 episodes where he took the words right out of my mouth, and we didn't have a lot of that in season 1. So hopefully in season 3, as we're adding more movies to the list, we'll get some of those conversations where you and I actually are in perfect agreement, and we can go head to head with Gene and Roger on their critique. But there was a lot of surprises this year where it's like, wow, you didn't like that film as much as I did. And if anything, I'm on Gene's side more than I'm on Roger's or your side. So, but again, that's the fun and the unpredictability of this podcast.
You know, and I think this one went against what we thought it would be, where we picked some new views and we were like, okay, this is going to be an open conversation. But by the end, or even to the middle of the conversation, we're like, oh, okay. So we're either on the same page or we kind of agree with the critics or we just dislike the movie or back and forth. There is a lot of back and forth on the movies, but with our critics, I think we were on the same page of first time views. And I think that's what went against the current with this idea. But at the same time, there are no regrets with this because you know what? It brought films that were almost lost in time to the public that did resurface for people to gain their own opinion. And that's what I really did appreciate about this year is that we took that wild card, we put it on the table, and you know what? People dug it because they did tune in and they did listen. And whether they watched the movie or not, who knows? But they at least recognized the movie at the end of the day.
Last year we had a ringer. We had Godzilla 85 that was suggested to us by an audience member. And that was like an easy target, right? We were able to chat about it in the awards ceremony, but we didn't give it any awards because it was just too easy, right? It was a ringer. I feel like we have a ringer this year. It's not on my list. I'm wondering if it's on yours, but it's definitely worth a conversation at the end of the episode where there definitely was a ringer movie that it should have won all the worst awards and maybe some of the best awards. But I'm curious to see if we have the same movie in mind. Probably not, but there is one film that stands out where I was like, wow, that was definitely the Godzilla 85 of season 2. But I guess we'll get into that conversation, won't we?
I think we're on the same page, and I went back and forth on 2 films, but it's too easy. And I didn't want this to be about 2 individual movies because that would be boring. So I took a lot of insight to how it lasted throughout the years, our critics' reviews, and so on and so forth. So I put a lot of insight on my list, not to make it so obvious.
And I did the same thing too for my bests. And at the same time, by doing that, I think I made it overly obvious. But what I wanted to do this year, more than last year, is I wanted to be sincere with my best awards and not ironic or, that special caveat that Antonio has of like, well, it's just a misunderstood performance or a misunderstood film. I really wanted to go with what I considered to be the best of the best for the best awards. And as for the worst, that's where I maybe got a little bit more ironic, but at the same time, I feel justified based off of my opinion of the movies and the performances. So let's just get into it, man. We will start with the best performances, director, and film of 2025. So first up, we've got Best Actress. Now, I will go ahead and go first on this one. My Best Actress of 2025 was Cher for Mask. And something tells me that you might have the same opinion. I don't know.
You see, I have a list of the top 3 here, and I was going back and forth from Kathy Bates to Cher, but at the end of the day, based on our conversation, it's a no-brainer. It has to be Cher because...
It has to be Cher. And I was with Kathy Bates on this one too. I have a list. I had 3. I had Cher at number 1, I had Kathy Bates at number 2, and then my wild card was Lily Taylor for Dogfight. Those were the 3 that were like, I was really struggling with. But I did exactly what you said. I had to go back to the conversation where which conversation was the one that we waxed the most poetic about a female performance. It was Mask. It was Cher. We spent most of the episode talking about her performance. So how could that not be the best actress award for 2025?
You know what? She is a wild card. In this point in her career, she picks smart roles, and we talked about that on the show. But my third wild card was Madeline Stowe for Blink. Because
I thought it might be.
Because I love her to death, and that was my sympathetic one that I had to throw in. But you know what? Cher deserves this Best Actress because she does a fantastic job. Not only is her talent buried into how she interacts with the cast, but how subtle she is when it comes to being the mother figure, but a renegade here. So it's a fantastic role. It's a fantastic performance. And you know what? She just understands the assignment.
That's 2 Cher Best Actress awards for you in a row, sir, because you gave her Best Actress back in 2024 for Mermaids, and I gave it to Winona Ryder. So at least Mermaids got the representation there, but that's 2 shares for you. We've triple shared now on Back to the Balcony.
I totally forgot I gave Cher Mermaids last year, but you know what? Well deserved because she is the underdog that nobody saw coming when it comes to her acting, and it's well deserved.
Absolutely. Okay, so now moving on to Best Actor of 2025 for me. I mean, I'm going to keep following the same theme here. I got Eric Stoltz for Mask for Best Actor 2025. What do you got?
So I had a top two, and again, one was more nostalgic. I did Robin Williams as my backup, but I think we're following a pattern here. I did Eric Schultz for The Mask because at the end of the day, I went back and forth. It is more shown as a talent that you can have that driven emotion through prosthetics and all
Right.
that. And he does a fantastic job. And again, we talked about it on the show. He is just mesmerizing, and we ignore the flaws and we see him as a normal person. To do that through the prosthetics, the makeup, and all that is a true talent.
And we talked about it in that episode too, where one hand washes the other. Those performances really feed off each other. And I think that is something that gets left out of the conversation when it comes to great performances and great acting in films is not just how you act on your own, not just your monologue or your soliloquy. It's how you listen and respond to your co-star, right? And Cher listens and pays attention and reacts to everything that Eric Stoltz is doing, and vice versa. We've commented on performances and in films where literally everyone's just doing their own thing and they're not cooperating with their co-stars. I think that's a very big part of being a great actor and a great performer is not just emoting on your own, but how you are giving and receiving the emotion and the dialogue to your co-stars. And the dynamic of Eric Stoltz and Cher in Mask, I think, is so perfect that there's no way I could not have given them both the Best Actor and Actress awards.
100%, because it would be so easy in this movie to be a dominant figure on screen. We have the bikers that are very dominant, that never overpower, but give that sympathetic feeling. So then we have Cher that it could be debatable or not that she is figuring herself out. She doesn't want to overpower. She's getting used to Hollywood, but it's about the ensemble too, that how they almost follow the character in his journey and his personality and almost match his energy.
And I think that is one of the gifts that that film has is the great ensemble cast and the way they all react together and the way we care about everybody. It's hard to have a movie with so many characters that you actually care about all of them. I mean, I'm going to go out and just kind of give my controversial opinion because I've been talking about it for the last 3 days online. I liked the script and I liked the direction of the new Knives Out film of Wake Up Dead Man. My biggest problem was the cast. There was no chemistry between anybody. The chemistry was literally Josh O'Connor, the main priest, and Daniel Craig. And then Glenn Close gives a great performance, but unlike the other two movies, no one has any chemistry with each other. The dynamic feels dead, and that was what hurt me. I didn't care about the mystery. I didn't care about the dialogue. What I wanted was that great chemistry that the first two films had between the ensemble. If you have an ensemble of actors and they are not working well with each other, your movie is dead, in my opinion. So while it's not a terrible movie, the chemistry and the interaction of those characters in that movie hurt me. But then here we are talking about Mask, where everybody is working with each other.
100%. And just a soundbite, it's an audio book. That's what it is, because you can listen to the words in the new Knives Out movie, but there is no dynamic. There is no charisma. There is nothing that interacts with each other. But here, we want to follow these characters. We want to see how they interact. And you made a great example between dynamic. This is the prime example of how you have different personalities, different positions, if you will, and they kind of just flow together. Everybody interacts and just gets it. It's a great movie. It's a great dynamic between the cast on interacting and understanding the assignment of we have our pivotal character and we can't outshine that character, but at the same time, our main character is going to try and blend in because we understand the conflict that he faces. It's an absolutely pitch perfect movie.
Agreed. Okay, so moving on to director. This is where I am going to, I think, break away from the cycle because I'm not even going to predict what your best director is. I went with the one like I did last year. The directors that challenge me, that make me want to do a puzzle piece of their film and what they're doing with it. Last year, I did Jonathan Demme for Melvin and Howard, just because of how slice of life and simple Americana it was, but how he was able to, let's say, capture that essence and almost make it a tiny bit surreal, yet so real at the same time. It's an enigma, right? It's a contradiction and a juxtaposition of itself. That's why I love it so much. This year, I did something similar. The film that really challenged me in the best way, that I loved the direction and I loved the scope more than I liked the film itself or the performances. My kind of weird wild card best director, I chose Robert Altman for Buffalo Bill and the Indians. And I think you knew that I was going to do something like that. That was the film that, as I went back through all the episodes, is the one that I was the most fascinated by the direction and the choices. And that fascination led me to the belief that I think it might be my favorite.
You see, as you were talking, I thought you were going to go with Cronenberg. It's just the pure description that you were saying. I'm like, are we going to have 3 in a row here? But, I can understand that point on it. And I don't know if I fully agree with it, but I can see the vision. The direction wasn't horrible. It was decent. Given the challenging historic nature of it, I can see and appreciate the direction on it, the cinematography of it. And I think if it was if I had to put my opinion on it, I think the cinematography leaned heavily into the success of that direction because it does look fantastic. And I think the partnership between the two is what really defined that direction. But I agree. It was a great directed movie. I will give you that.
And what I like about Altman in most of his movies, but especially in this one, is there is a controlled chaos to a film where I think a skilled director can allow actors to improvise not only their dialogue, but their business, right? Where you've got 3 or 4 groups of people who are trying to get their dialogue across, but they're all in the same shot and they're all doing something different. And you're able to pick up on almost everything. There's a controlled chaos to it, and I think that's a skill. And that's why I really liked it, where you can have Buffalo Bill talking to Sitting Bull in one corner, but then on the other side, you've got the guy who's running the show, and then you've got Kevin McCarthy on the other side having a conversation with the cowboys, and it just goes back and forth, like in MASH, how it's just a nonstop display of business where it feels so real. And that sometimes I want a movie to feel like a movie, and then sometimes I want a film like this to feel like I'm watching an actual conversation or an actual exercise of someone doing business.
And I think that was our disagreement with the movie is I wanted...
Yeah, you didn't like that.
I did not, because I wanted more clarity of, does it want to be more chaotic? Does it want to be more of a historical epic comedy? What does it want to be? And I think I didn't get that clear direction. And that's why I'm not going to agree with your pick, but I can see it. But to me,
I wasn't expecting you to agree with it.
But I can see, I think during that conversation, we even said, this is going to be a particular taste. This one is, you're going to be on the love it or hate it side of it. And me, the unique one where I can see the vision, but I just couldn't get bought in.
Yeah, I mean, you're a mainstream Altman appreciator, and I like those avant-garde ones that really don't have a plot and really don't have a story. They're literally just 2.5 hours of ensemble business, and this is a perfect example of that. So, all right, so what did you bring to the table for Best Director?
This one I think is going to be a little bit obvious, and this one I think is going to be the most obvious out of my picks, but I had to go and reflect because this is the category I spent, I think, the most time on. But at the end of the day, it had to be uniqueness, it had to be vision, it had to be just overall challenges. And I had to go with Cronenberg's Naked Lunch because it is such a bizarre film to get right. It is such a bizarre adaptation to get right. And he gives us all those uncomfortable feels in the right shots. From the noir feel to the up-close shots of insect buttholes to everything bizarre in this movie. And it makes you feel dirty. And to me, that is the masterful direction here, is that he goes to the intent to say, this isn't going to be a feel-good movie. By the time you leave, you might have a thought, but it's not going to be a good thought. It's going to make you feel gross. But you can appreciate the style of how he goes about it when it comes to the noir feel.
There is something to be said about the visceral reaction to cinema and how much that relies on what kind of director you have. I say that because I just put out my episode a couple weeks ago about Quentin Tarantino's top 20 films of the 21st century. You know, for the first 25 years of this new century, he was on a podcast and he chose his number one film of the last 25 years to be Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down, which is by no means my favorite Ridley Scott film of the 21st century. But the point he made, I totally understand what he was talking about, where there have been very few films I've seen in my lifetime that I actually feel like I'm in the movie. The visceral reaction of the fear, of the anxiety of being hunted in a Somali town that's overrun, where you are a corner away from being shot in the head. There is such trauma in that film. I don't like it. I do not like the way that film makes me feel. But that's the point. And that is a very, very rare skill for a director to have. So I kind of get why that was on his list, because it's hard for me to think of other films, very few of the 21st century, that made me feel like I was going to die watching the movie.
You know, it's a funny thing because we've talked about war films in the past, and I said that it's a one and done, and you kind of match that tone.
Yeah, I'm not a war guy.
It's hard, and that doesn't mean just because it's a one and done movie that it's a bad movie. There could be a one and done because it is a poorly made movie, but then you have that hit to the emotional core that just says, I don't want to feel that way again. And when you
Right.
reach that point as a filmmaker, you know you've accomplished it. You're not thinking of box office numbers. You're not thinking of rewatchability. You're thinking, am I going to hit this audience member, this viewer, with an impact that makes them feel something? And Black Hawk Down, I can see because I'm the same way. Anxiety filled watching that movie. I've seen it once and I don't care to see it again because it's not that it's a bad movie. It's because it did a successful job of what it set out to do, is make an impact so a viewer feels something.
There's only one other film of the 21st century that wasn't on his list, but there's only one other film that made me feel that kind of anxiety in the 21st century, and that was Uncut Gems. And I will never watch that movie again. Like, that movie had a visceral response to me that was just horrifying and terrible and just gut wrenching. I wanted to throw up watching that movie. Black Hawk Down did the same thing, just in a different setting, in a different kind of atmosphere. But I think there is something to be said about directors that can make you feel like you're going to throw up. If we were going to talk about films of the 20th century, Saving Private Ryan is in that group too. Like, that first half hour, I don't want to see that again. Like, it hurt me. So yeah, that's where I stand on that list. But I get what you're talking about with Naked Lunch, because even though it's not a war movie, it makes you feel like something's crawling inside you. And I think that's what makes that Best Director award for you very appreciated.
Just the fact you said it that way is playing scenes back in my head of Naked Lunch, and it's making me feel unclean. So congratulations.
All right, so best film of 2025. Oh, that was a hard one, man, because I have my favorite and have what I think is the best. I'm not going to be me on this particular category and be the wild card player. I'm going to say the best film of 2025's season was Mask. Mask was my best picture. It had to be. I was really, really, really pushing The Hidden. I love The Hidden, but also, let's be real, it's not the best picture. It might be my favorite one that we watched, but it's not the best.
This one, I see it. I do. And I have The Hidden on a list that later on the show. This one, I think it's hard for me because I went back and forth because Mask was at top of mind, but I have to go back, and we've had this discussion numerous times on a movie that just goes back to my childhood. And it would feel wrong for me to bring this movie to the show and not call it the best movie. Because when we look at movies, Antonio, when we look at movies, it all starts at childhood and how we grow. And honestly, I wouldn't appreciate the movie watching experience without this movie. So I'm going to dedicate this movie because it is the origin of my love of movies. And stop giving me that look, damn it. But I have to go with Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say Newsies.
No. Oh, no.
I was cringing because I thought you were going to say Newsies.
No.
Okay, I'll take you. I'll take your Good Morning Vietnam.
So that wasn't even on the list because even though I give you shit about Newsies and I think it's still a pitch perfect musical, it is not the best movie. It's not even a great movie. It is a feel good movie and it's intense. Good Morning Vietnam has Robin Williams. It has him just extend his range. And again, I go back to why it's a good picture for me is because it's the first movie my dad held my hand to go see. And to me, anybody with their best movie, if they had their first movie on the list, it will always go back to your first experience. So even though it's a great movie, it's also my first great experience.
Right, and I definitely think it's best picture worthy. You and I both said that we think it is pretty much like a perfect film, with the exception of the last 10 minutes where everything just kind of falls apart, and it just kind of rushes through the end. But we've seen best picture winners that do worse than Good Morning Vietnam does. So I think it's a total valid pick for best picture. So really it's hard. Like Mask and Good Morning Vietnam, those are two tough movies to put up against. I can tell you right now, like I said, The Hidden was my favorite, but nothing comes close, in my opinion, to those two movies when it comes to prestige of best film that we reviewed in 2025.
Including challenge. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam was a challenging movie to take the topic of Vietnam and add a comedic spin to it and balance the dramatic features and comedy of Robin Williams. So to me, I think it's worthy of the fact that when it comes to the direction too, and that was at top of mind on the list, is how it balances all the elements to make you feel happy, sad, stressed, and almost a loneliness to it.
No, agreed. Cool. I'm happy with all of our picks for best actress, actor, director, and film for the year. I think we watched a lot of blah movies that were easy to just kind of wipe off the table, right? And really focus on the movies that meant something. And I think that's the difference between this year and last year. Last year, I feel it was harder to pick because we were picking prestige movies every week, essentially, with a few wild cards in there. This year was mostly wild cards with a few prestige pictures mixed in. So it was definitely more challenging. But it wasn't challenging to me for the worst category. You ready to go?
I'm ready. My favorite part of the show this year.
It really is. It really is. I don't like to do worst ofs on either show. So if we're going to do it, it'll be the award ceremony once a year. My worst actress for 2025 was Jessica Lange in Everybody's All American. So first of all, she should have never taken that role. I blame her agent, I blame her, I blame the director, I blame everybody involved for putting a 40-year-old woman, and again, I'm not trying to be ageist here, but when you have her be an 18-year-old cheerleader in a Letterman's jacket, no. And she already has that kind of Southern fried accent anyway. The fact that she amplified it and amplified it even more as her character aged, I think it was just a bad reading of what that character was supposed to be, and it just did not work for me at all. There may have been, let's say, worse performances in movies that we reviewed, but this performance is what literally ruined this movie for me.
I think I agree with you, and when we get into a different category, I kind of had the same thing, but for a different reason. But,
Okay.
This one, I think you're 100% right. I think when it comes to her performance, it was almost a cheesiness that she didn't understand the assignment, or she didn't know how to interact with these co-stars. And I'm going to go in and give a sneak preview to a category later, is it's a miscast. It completely 100% is a miscast because it really, this movie, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, is a calamity of just miscast of watching adults trying to play kids. And I think these adults are trying to understand kids at this time. and they can't get into that nostalgic factor of what it was like during this time. And I think that was the main problem with the film, is that everybody was on their own idea. And I think you're right with Christopher Lee. It was distracting. I think that would be the key word for me, is a lot of her overly done lines were just overly distracting.
And there, like, you are 100% right. That whole movie was miscast. John Goodman, who was 40, should not have been playing a 19-year-old college football guy. Dennis Quaid, I'm sorry. Like, maybe I bought him as the younger character, but as the older character, absolutely not. The best cast person in that movie is Wayne Knight, who wants to watch Dennis Quaid pee at the beginning of the movie. Like, I thought that was the best casting in the movie, but I digress. That's my worst actress. What do you got on your list?
This one, I think, might be a little bit of a debate, because I think when it comes to, I don't want to blame this actress, but I do blame her experience at this point in her career, and that's Audrey Hepburn for Bloodline.
That was my number 2. Continue.
When it comes to how she interprets the character, we both, I think, agree this was a dull movie. This was a hard watch. There is nothing interesting about this movie, and we take a legend like Audrey Hepburn, where we have the sleek, the sexy, the almost tense plot line that this should have been. She doesn't lean into her talent. She doesn't go beyond what the linear lines tell her. There's no depth to this character, and she doesn't even attempt to try and add depth to this character in performance. This is just one of those movies. She just speaks her lines, collects a paycheck, and that is the primary way she goes about this movie, to just go nowhere. She is the prime reason this movie, if you don't look, if you just listen, is why it's dull.
And she's not the only one. Everyone is dead behind the eyes in this movie. It was one of our biggest complaints of that. And yes, I agree with you. That was my number 2 point on there. I am so grateful that you didn't bring Dorothy Stratton to the conversation, because even though Galaxina was not our best film, that was the Ringer film I was talking about, but I actually enjoyed what she was doing. Like, it wasn't a good performance, but it fit the movie. And I feel that it was a very restrained performance, where she's playing an android that eventually becomes more human, and I bought it. So I was glad to not hear you say Dorothy Stratton, because I would have said, how dare you, sir?
This is the category that I had to go back and really have that conversation with myself, because Stratton, I'm looking on my screen right now, and she's on the list at the bottom of the list. But this is where we have to kind of look. We look at even Carnosaur to an extent. We look at budget. We look at experience. We look at the attempt. And Stratton, for her experience with her first, I don't want to say big movie, but whatever, it was a decent enough job for the intent. And there was a lot more wrong with Galaxina than just her performance. And everything else that went wrong with that movie overpowered her performance. So rightfully so, I couldn't put her on my worst actress list.
And I couldn't put Carnosaur as my ringer, because Gene gave it a thumbs up. So it couldn't be a ringer. It couldn't be a Godzilla 1985, because he gave it a thumbs up, which still blows my mind. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, so for worst actor of 2025, I had the same guy for 2 different movies, and I had to pick the movie. So I'm wondering if we might have the same one. My worst actor for 2025 was John Savage in Hair. And the reason why I picked him for Hair and not The Amateur is because he is literally the weakest link in Hair. There might be the argument that that's what he's supposed to be, because Treat Williams and Beverly D'Angelo and everyone else in that amazing cast is supposed to like bring him from like this boring character into something better. I get it. But he never becomes anything better. His character on paper does, and on film essentially does, but his performance doesn't. It is so dead behind the eyes, and it always makes me wonder how this guy got so many great roles in so many great movies, because I am never convinced by his performance in anything. So The Amateur, I just didn't like at all, but Hair I did. And so it pissed me off that we had this weak performance, in my opinion, in such a great movie.
It's hard for me to judge a performance on a musical, because there's no small roles in a musical, because it's hard work. So I don't disagree. it's hard to pick a bad performance in an on-screen musical because everybody's supposed to be outlandish, everybody's supposed to be over the top, or and at times needs to be overly emotional when it comes
Yeah,
to
but
how it's
Homeboy
delivered.
barely even sings.
Doesn't
He doesn't even sing.
he doesn't, but you have to have that background character that has no
Yeah.
musical talent that just is the anchor. And I shouldn't say that. He's not the anchor, but at the same time, you do have that normality character. But I don't disagree. I think it was a very forgettable performance. I will 100% say that.
Especially since the movie's so good. Like to have a movie
100%.
that good and the fact that a poor performance like that can't ruin the movie, I think that just speaks higher to the movie and the director and everyone else involved.
That I 100% agree with because it is a fantastic movie. And if you can take all the other elements in a musical that overshine to distract from a linear performance, I think that's a win.
All right. Who did you bring to worst actor of the 2025 season?
I'm going to cheat on this one. So this one I have almost a tie. And and one of the reasons I'm bringing two to the table is because I don't think it's this one's individual's fault. I think it's a casting fault. And I think you know where I'm going to go with this. And my first one is going to be John Goodman. So, and I think for all the reasons you said, and everybody's all American, it's a miscast problem. And John Goodman, he looks old, he looks worn, and definitely shouldn't be playing a college student. And he does the best he can, but the appearance is what stands out at a poor performance. You can tell he's trying, but it just doesn't work. But I think it would be a misfire for me to say, based on looks, based on casting, it's a horrible performance because he was set up for disaster. So I love John Goodman. You know my love for John Goodman, but this wasn't a good performance. But my number one, this is the one that teetered, and I think this one's going to be a conversation, is going to be Michael Scofield for Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. And again, it is structured, it is linear, again, it goes through the formula. He doesn't do anything with it. It's really just like a table read. We have that taboo relationship that we discussed on that episode where it's a older guy seeking the younger girl, and he goes about it casually with the cast around him saying, you got to be careful, dude. And he doesn't have any emotion around that element. And it goes to the same problem with John Goodman, is whether that's a writing problem or not. But I was never bought into that character. I just thought it was formula. It was just straightforward, and he added no emotion to it. There wasn't a line in memory with that movie that I can recall that he had an impact.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you because if you go back and listen to the episode, I said that character should have been played by Matt Dillon because that's who I wanted to see in that role. You're right. Michael Scofield is 100% forgettable in that movie. Again, I like the movie. It's nowhere near being on my best of anything list. But if we're talking about weakest links, that is the weakest link of that film. So yeah, I do not disagree with you.
Happy to hear that. That's the first admission I will get from that film. But you know what? We can see the intent from both actors. But again, we go back to the problem of how you utilize the material and the casting of it. And with both movies, I think both characters were set up for disaster. But I think that one really tipped the hat on at least you have some dialogue to work with.
Agreed. Okay. Moving on to worst director. This one might be controversial because the movie does have an audience out there. The movie does have a higher than I think is deserved Rotten Tomatoes score and IMDb score, and even was able to get a remake in 2025. But my least favorite movie, because of how disappointed I was, not only by the performance, by the actor, but how good the movie could have been. Not like my least favorite of the movie year, which I think was just dog shit all around. The movie that I think had the best opportunity to be good, but wasn't. I'm giving it to Charles Jarrett for The Amateur, 1981. That movie should have been fucking amazing. The script was solid. I think the idea and the story and the novel it was based on was solid. But you're going to give us a Max von Sydow performance that's bullshit? Or sorry, a Christopher Plummer performance that's bullshit? You're going to give us just this weak, tepid spy thriller that should be intense all the way through and really shit the bed with that finale, with that shootout in the chandelier factory. Forget about it. I hated that movie so much because of how disappointed I was in the direction and the editing. We talked a lot about the editing. Not an award category for us, but the director has a lot to do with the editing in a lot of these circumstances. So that is my choice for worst director.
That was number 3 on my list, and I 100% agree. Given the material, just the mere premise of it should have had any director saying, this is what I can do with this. This is how can I make this exciting? How can I make this engaging? And it's just boring. It goes nowhere, and the cast is wasted. It's almost like they just did a table read, recorded the voice, and just put a visual on screen and just had bodies. It went nowhere. It drove me nuts. So I 100% agree with that.
The scene with the poison pills, the forced suicide scene, should have been the most gripping scene of the movie. It should have been one of the most gripping scene of the 80s. Written well. The idea was fantastic. It was boring as hell and no tension because the guy did not know how to do it right. So yeah, that's my pick. All right, what about yours?
So we're going on the same theme here of just dullness, and I've already mentioned this movie once, but it has to be Terrence Young for Bloodline.
That's my number 2.
Because it takes some good ideas. It takes the premise, and it just takes a cast, and the director just goes, make it as dull and boring as possible. We want this to be a seductive movie. We want this to be a secluded movie. But it never really has anything of interest to say. Even when it comes to the shot, we're more focused on up-close shots and just cut and paste transition shots. There's nothing even interesting to look at other than the star power of Audrey Hepburn. But even that, again, like we said before, is underutilized. Nobody has anything to say. It's almost like the director has a gun to this cast head and just says, speak. Do nothing else but speak. And it is this one I think we talked about on the show. It took me maybe 2 to 3 times to even get through
Just to get through it, yeah.
It was so hard to watch because visually and there's nothing, and audio-wise, there's nothing. There's nothing good I can say about this movie.
Yeah, and Terrence Young, how disappointing that is. The guy directed like 3 of my favorite James Bond movies. He directed Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn, which is like one of the most suspenseful movies of all time. And then he did Cold Sweat with Charles Bronson. Like, the dude is a good director. What you said earlier about the performances, where it's like, give me the paycheck so I can just get the fuck out of here, it feels the same way with the direction, too. So, yes, I agree that was a terrible directing job. It just wasn't enough to edge out my guy, but it was my strong number 2.
It reminds me of you go to a meeting or a lecture and you're just hearing lines delivered for 8 hours or so, and your mind just becomes numb. That's what I can picture this cast being. They're showing up for work and they're delivering lines and they have no control over the scene, and they are just mind numbing, where they are just speaking it just to get through it. There's no energy here. Can you imagine as a professional going to a movie like this with no creative control to an extent and just speaking lines? This is complacency at its best.
And the cast, it had an amazing cast. Ben Gazzara and Audrey Hepburn and the guy that played Goldfinger, right? Like, there's James Mason giving a boring performance. Like, how does James Mason give a boring performance? I don't understand. So, yeah. Well, I mean, so that leads us right into our worst film of the year. There's no need to build up the tension. My least favorite film of the year was Bloodline. 100%.
I'm with you. That was on my list. Bloodline is the worst. And this is one of those wild cards I think we did for first time watches, if I remember correctly. Yes. And there's a reason this went buried, and it should never be recovered again. Because anybody watching that attempts to watch this movie is going to be asleep by the 20-minute mark. You can have 3 espressos and still fall asleep by the 20-minute mark because it is that dull and pointless.
Well, and then the whole fact that there is like the sex killer aspect to it, but then it goes back to the whole corporate espionage thing, and she's running the company. Like, obviously there's a plot there that was very well thought out in the novel, but it did not translate well into the film. And if you're trying to win audiences by saying, look, Audrey Hepburn's back. It's been a few years since she's made a film, and we got James Mason, and we got Terrence Young directing. Like, sign me up. And then to sit through that shit just made it even worse. The fact that it was garbage.
You know you've done a poor job when you take a sex symbol like Audrey Hepburn, the sexiness of the dialogue, I should say the potential of the sexiness of the dialogue, and just overall the theme of it that could have been really tense, could have been sexy, it could have been driven by that. But Young's like, nah, let's just sit by the fire and just read the book and everybody
And
speak your lines and
stunt
we'll call it a
cast.
day.
And stunt cast. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that we had the same agreement. I mean, last year we both agreed on Blame It on Rio, which I think was a no-brainer. I had a pretty good idea that this was going to be a same situation where we both hated this movie so much in that conversation. I can't think of one that we disliked less except for The Ringers, right? So there we go. Okay, those are our films. So now we're going to go to the best reviews. I've got my best review from my perspective, respective critic. I got Gene, I have my best and my worst, and then Justin will be covering Roger. So I'll go ahead and start with my best Gene review of the year. I had a lot of pleasant surprises from Gene this year, and it was great because I almost lost my respect for him entirely after some of the bad reviews he gave back in the 2024 season. But this year he surprised me, even though I got mad at him a lot on a lot of things, and I've got it on here as well in my worst Gene review. But the one that made me feel the best about his love for fun, because I thought he didn't know how to have fun anymore, but one review kind of proved otherwise, and that was his review for The Hidden. The Hidden had to come out somewhere, and the fact that those two waxed poetic about a film that I love so much, that's genuinely fun and genuinely good, especially when he's known for shitting on movies like this, and he didn't. That is why that was my favorite Gene review of 2025.
I agree with that, and I think we're going to follow the same theme here with a different movie. I think that was a great review from Gene, and honestly, it was one of those first-time watches for me, and I absolutely loved the movie. It was one of those gems that you just didn't see coming, and you don't understand how it didn't become more successful to an extent. So I think Gene did a great job with it, and I swear to God, I thought you were going to lead to Carnosaur and surprise me with a different rewatch, so thank you for that.
I wouldn't have spoiled it earlier in the episode if that was the case.
So I think you're 100% right. I think that was a fantastic review for Gene, especially from the last 2 years where we consistently hear Debbie Downer of not having fun with the movie. And that's, to an extent, the core of watching a movie, is to have fun, to be entertained. And if we're lucky, take something away from it. But at the end of the day, it is for entertainment. And I think Gene, in that review, really did shine his inner child.
Agreed. What do you got for Roger?
So let me just state, not saying it's a great movie. I think we've established this in our conversation.
It doesn't have to be. It's just your favorite review, right?
It's my favorite review from Roger, and I think I picked this one because I think with listeners, they've heard this review time and time again, and it's the first time we've seen a critic say, I don't fucking care. I love this movie, and I'm going to stand my ground because it made me have fun, it made me feel something, and my inner child came out, and it's going to be no surprise. It's going to be Cop and a Half, because that review has been legendary between Roger Ebert in some good aspects and some bad aspects. But at the end of the day, he spouted an opinion that was controversial to a family movie at that time, and he didn't care. And that is a review that led to a lot of his successes down the road. Not the best picture of the year, not a 4-star review, but sticking to his guns on an opinion. And when it comes to a critique, that is the most important thing you can do, is not care what other people think. It is your opinion, your review, no matter how much, again, with Gene over the years, that try to get you to change your opinion.
And that just leads right into my worst review from Gene of 2025, and that it was his review for Cop and a Half, because he got it wrong. And not only did he get it wrong, he continued to pester Roger about it for the rest of the year. Even towards the end of the year, where he's like, are you sure you don't want to change your mind about Cop and a Half? And Roger's like, no, I liked that movie. I'm standing on Cop and a Half. So yeah, the Gene review for Cop and a Half was a travesty, and I disagree with it 100%. Okay, so what do you got for your worst Roger review?
This one, again, it's hard because I have one that we didn't get the actual Siskel and Ebert review, but it's going to be an honorable mention. I don't think it's fair to bring that to the table without an actual review, but I'm going to mention it. And that's going to be Newsies. And you knew it was coming. Newsies was going to be in this conversation. That I get at the time, this wasn't critically praised. But I think just like last year's Ghost in the Darkness, I think he was way too hard on it with his
Yeah.
1-star review because, again, we talk about intent. Who is this movie made for? Who really did benefit from this? And it's a Disney musical that went to inspire youth, that through music, through inspirational historic figures. And I think that is what was missing is Roger's inner child on just enjoying the music and enjoying the story. But he tried to add logic to it, which is something this movie didn't seek out to do. And time has told people love Newsies, they love the music, and they love the intent of it. So I think he was proven wrong when it comes to Newsies. But overall, my worst review for Roger is going to be Event Horizon. And that is mainly due to the fact Roger is a sci-fi guy. He can recognize the symbolism of what a movie's trying to do. Is Event Horizon perfect? No, but in his review, he misses the marks when it comes to what this movie is trying to do. The religious tie-ins, the visuals he did recognize, but he didn't tie it into, again, the intent of what this movie is going to do. Our critics focused on the gore. And that's something that is a backseat to that. That is a shock factor to get people in their seats to see this movie so it can tell a message, it can tell a story of themes, and it is completely missed. And again, we go with like Newsies. Over time, he has been proven wrong. These two movies have been a following over the years, and I think these two are his big misses.
Agreed. Okay, wow, cool. I wasn't expecting that, but it makes a lot of sense. All right, so now to the very last category of our 2025 awards ceremony, something that we did not do last year that we added to this one, and that was Best First Time Watch. There was a lot of discoveries this year for both you and I. Films that I brought to the table that you hadn't seen, films that listeners brought to the table that neither of us had seen, and then, of course, our Discovery 2-month period where we were just pulling films from the review list that we were not familiar with. Some we'd never even heard of. Like I never knew what Blink was until you put it on the list. So what were our favorite first-time watches of the year? Well, mine was a film that you were very unfavorable of, and that was Serial, starring Martin Mull. And I loved that movie. I loved the ensembleness of it. I loved the direction. I thought that it was very Albert Brooksy and Altman-esque in a sense. But I just really kind of dug the kind of Tales of the City, East Bay, wine country, Napa, health food, hippie culture that conflicts with the sexual conservatism of these yuppies that eventually discover their sexuality by meeting people that are a little bit more out there. I just kind of really dug it. I feel it's a lot more relevant in this day and age than it may have back then. Back then, it was kind of like an expose of what's happening in these parts of Northern California. And nowadays, it's like, oh, this is just another form of polyamorism, another form of gender identification, right? Like it really fits with the culture of the day. And so from that lens, I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was really, really funny. And I, again, loved the whole cult aspect at the end. I loved the bikers taking out the cult aspect. It was just a lot of fun for me. And I know you didn't like it, but it was my favorite discovery of our show.
You know, Bill Persky was on my list for worst director. And this is why. Is the biggest issue I had with it is it went too sitcom-y. It really leaned into a tone that just didn't resonate with me. I get that the things that you can resonate with, but there are so many opportunities in that movie that we can see either tension build or more a bigger push to a comedic build, there it just tends to go to the edge and stop. And I think that is the biggest thing with the director. Perkins should have pushed the envelope further. He should have gone in. It's almost like giving a passive aggressive message and then reading the room and saying, I'm just going to be quiet. So, and I think that's the biggest problem I had with it. It's just, it was too safe. And, you know,
I disagree. I mean, yeah, he was a TV director, and I get the whole sitcom direction part aspect of it. But the fact that, like, I'm a big fan of the Neil Simon ensemble movies like California Suite and Plaza Suite and all those movies where you get a bunch of people in a hotel or like in a resort and then their lives kind of intermingle with each other, blah, blah, blah. But those are always within the PG-13 realm. And this took it to the edge where we got boobs. We got Martin Mull tumbling through an orgy, which I thought was hilarious. Like, it goes somewhere that the Neil Simon ensemble movies don't, and that's what made it great for me. I can't stop thinking about that film now as I'm talking about it. So, again, to each his own, but that was my discovery of the year.
We needed better direction on the orgy. We needed an aerial shot. We needed close-ups. So that's my problem with it. The orgy scene wasn't well directed. So Perkins sucks for that reason.
All right. Well, maybe there's a director's cut or something if you want.
I'm not.
Or you can watch, or you can go watch the movie Short Bus by John Cameron Mitchell
on the list now.
All right. What was your best first time watch of 2025?
This one, it has to be, and I'm glad you brought it to the table because I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the fun factor, the chemistry, just the mere idea of it, and that was The Hidden. Yep. I think this one was fun, and it was surprising to me because I watched the movie before the critic reviews, and after watching The Hidden, I said, our critics are absolutely going to hate this movie. But, you know, I was pleasantly surprised on the critiques of it. It is a fun movie. It takes a recycled idea and adds just enough elements to make it unique. And I compared it to Alien Nation. And
agreed. But it's Alien Nation with some more Lynchian tropes to it, which is what I liked about it.
And that's what I liked about it because it didn't take itself so serious, but you can tell the overlaying themes are there, but it went into just some ridiculous special effects to almost, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it almost evened it out to just say, don't take us so seriously, but we do have something to say. And I thought it was a pleasant watch. And since that episode, I've watched it like 2 more times because I've enjoyed it that much.
It's got one of the best opening bank robbery chase sequences in any film of the 80s. Like, the opening scene is just banging, especially when he hits the dude in the wheelchair and he does like a double tuck flip over the car. 100%. I am so proud that is your best first time watch of the year. I feel like I really did the Lord's work on that one.
I was curious to kind of think what you were going to think of my opinion on that one, because I really did. It did take me by surprise. And when a film does take you by surprise, you enjoy it and appreciate it that much. And when it comes to a film that's out of the vault, that really is almost aging, it's harder to appreciate that to an extent at a new time watch when you have so much movies under your belt, but it still felt fresh. And I think that's what the real grab for me is even though it was an older movie, it still felt good to watch it. It was entertaining.
Right. Okay, cool. That was a great award ceremony, and that was a great season. Like I said, so different than the first one. And I know we've got a bunch of movies and special episodes. We're doing a lot more special episodes in season 3 than we did this last year. I think it just kind of got away from us and we got stuck in that discovery zone. But we're doing a lot more special episodes, expose episodes. The one I'm looking forward to is we have an episode of when they were on the K for Kids review show, where they're literally debating movies with 10-year-olds. I can't wait to do that episode. But other than that, man, it's time to close the book on 2025 and put this awards ceremony to bed. What do you think?
You know, proud of this year, proud of everybody that's listened. And again, loved our discussions this year. I think it amplified what we did in the first season. And I absolutely can't wait for season 3. It's going to be a fun year. And looking on the list, I'm even more excited.
Same. And we're not going to do any special thanks at our year episode because just 3 episodes ago was our 100th. They're all on that episode. Go back and listen to that one. So for next week, our first episode of season 3 for 2026, it's kind of bittersweet, but we are 2 days removed as of this recording of the brutal murder of Rob Reiner and his wife. And it's, I don't know, just a weird kind of happenstance that the very first episode that we had planned for 2026 was the infamous bashing of Rob Reiner's film North by Siskel and Ebert. And I feel like that's just not the way to go. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to do a Rob Reiner memorial / appreciation episode, a retrospective. I think it's just the thing to do. North will definitely be in that conversation, but North, in my opinion, is a movie that has a lot of heart, maybe too much heart that critics just didn't want. They wanted the Rob Reiner that they'd seen for the last decade before. And I think we'll definitely have a good conversation about that and his filmography, because the dude had one of the most stellar filmographies of any director of the last 30, 40 years. I mean, if you could argue that he perfected the rom-com formula. And yeah, it's such a tragedy that we've lost him, and I'm really looking forward to do a respectful retrospective of his work.
I think it's absolutely appropriate, and not only that, but I think it's going to be a completely emotional episode because Rob Reiner has, like you said, is the king of rom-coms, and I think he has impacted Hollywood in a drastic way. And I think we were texting the night of, and I sent out texts of just pure disbelief of not wanting to understand what's happened. And even now, it's researching his prior works, it's trying to just block out the negatives and respecting the impact that he had on the cinematic world. And I can't wait for that discussion. I'm sure it's going to be an emotional one, and I'm sure it's going to be a funny and just enlightening one. And, I think North, like you said, will come down the road, but honoring Rob Reiner in his career is going to be the best thing. And I can't wait to just unload Rob Reiner discussions.
So once again, thank you so much for joining us in 2025. If you discovered us for the first time, please go back and listen to season 1, our 2024 season. A lot of great episodes where we were kind of getting our feet wet, discovering our patterns, discovering Siskel and Ebert better, and having a better chance to understand why they critiqued the films the way they did. But I think season 2 definitely has the better conversations, especially the hot topic and hot button conversations. Like, for example, episode 1, Full Metal Benji, the infamous argument between Siskel and Ebert comparing Full Metal Jacket's review to Benji the Hunted, might be one of my favorite episodes of the year. Like, it was just so good. It was a great way to kick it off. So if we kicked off 2025 with a controversial bang, we're going to kick off 2026 with a heartfelt, emotional one.
I think that's fair. And, it's when Siskel and Ebert are energetic about their conversations, and we have just merely scratched the surface on some of these conversations, and we have a lot more to come in this upcoming season. But I think starting it off, we got to switch it up into the most appropriate way we can. And going into this going into this season, I think listeners are going to be very pleased with what they hear. And I look forward to our conversations.
All right, everyone. Well, you know what to do. Please like, rate, review, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please join our YouTube channel. Subscribe today. Leave a comment, leave a review, share it with your friends. Let's grow that channel. And if you need to find... I can't speak now. Got all kind of emotional about that Rob Reiner thing. You can find me, Antonio, the host of the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast, over at thecultworthy.com. You can find my co-host Justin over at
themoviewire.com.
And I'll see you in 2026, man.
See you next year.